At my wedding, an unexpected situation unfolded, one that left me utterly stunned. It started subtly, whispers rippling through the room as guests exchanged uneasy glances. The source of the disturbance, my in-laws, who had indulged far too much in the celebratory drinks, became the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. As I stood there, basking in the glow of what was meant to be one of the happiest days of my life, I was suddenly pulled into an unwelcome reality. My father-in-law, his voice slurred yet firm with entitlement, took center stage in the middle of the reception. With all eyes on him, he made a declaration so audacious that it sent shockwaves through the crowd. "If you truly want to be part of our family, you must prove your financial worth," he bellowed, his words slicing through the festive atmosphere. "From now on, you should contribute an additional $5,000 per month to show your commitment." A heavy silence blanketed the room. I felt the blood drain from my face, my breath hitching in disbelief. My mind reeled, struggling to process what had just been demanded of me. I had never anticipated such brazen entitlement, least of all on my wedding day. Just as I was about to respond, my father, who had always been my unwavering support, stepped forward. Taking the microphone, he addressed my in-laws with a voice both steady and resolute. "This is unacceptable," he declared, his disappointment evident. "Today is about the love and commitment of my daughter and her husband, not about money or proving worth. Your behavior is not only inappropriate but deeply embarrassing." His words sent a ripple through the room, breaking the tense stillness. I felt a flicker of relief as he took control of the situation, shielding me from further humiliation. "My name is Betty Rachel. I am 33 years old, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My journey to this moment had been shaped by loss, love, and resilience. Having lost my mother at a young age, I was raised by my father, a man who took on the role of both parents with unwavering devotion. His sacrifices and steadfast love became my foundation. Though the loss made me wary of opening my heart, I spent years guarding my emotions, rarely allowing anyone in, until I met Stephen. Stephen, a 35-year-old man with a gentle heart and patient soul, entered my life through a mutual friend. His kindness, unwavering support, and persistent care slowly chipped away at my emotional walls. Despite my initial hesitation, he proved to be the kind of man who respected my boundaries, always reassuring me with words that warmed my heart. "Don't worry," he often told me, "if you ever feel unsure, I'll be here for you until you feel better. You can count on me, Betty." Over time, I began to envision a future with him. The idea of forever no longer seemed daunting but rather comforting. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate. It felt right. Sharing the news with my father was another emotional milestone. I'll never forget the way his eyes welled with tears as he said, "Wow, Betty, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you." I laughed, playfully calling him dramatic, but the moment was significant. My father had always worried I would never find someone to share my life with. Seeing his joy made me realize just how deeply he had carried those fears. His happiness solidified my belief that this was the right path for me. With our engagement official, Stephen and I embarked on the whirlwind journey of wedding planning. Balancing our demanding careers with endless preparations was exhausting, yet we managed to keep our spirits high. Amidst the chaos, one significant event loomed: meeting Stephen's parents for the first time. Unlike my father, who had welcomed Stephen with open arms, his parents had remained elusive, their schedules conveniently conflicting each time we tried to arrange a meeting. Eventually, we secured a visit, and as we approached their home, a strange nervousness settled in my stomach. "Don't worry," Stephen reassured me, squeezing my hand. "My parents are very kind." Yet, the moment his mother answered the door, I sensed an undercurrent of something else. "Mom, I'm home," Stephen greeted her cheerfully. She offered him a warm smile, but when her gaze landed on me, it cooled. "So, you're Betty," she said, her tone laced with judgment rather than welcome. The scrutiny in her eyes was unmistakable as she led us inside. Seated in the living room, she wasted no time. "Betty, I'm curious," she began, her voice sharp. "What do you bring to the table? Stephen is our treasure, our only child. If you're going to marry him, are you truly worthy?" Her words felt like an interrogation rather than a conversation. I barely had time to process before she continued. "You're joining our family, you know. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" I blinked, taken aback. I wasn't marrying into royalty. Why was I being treated as though I had to prove my worth just to be accepted? When I hesitated, she snapped, "When I ask you a question, Answer immediately, you're being rude. Feeling overwhelmed but determined to remain composed, I responded, I hope that Stephen and I will support each other throughout our marriage. She scoffed, naive, it's your job as a wife to support your husband, not the other way around, you don't even understand the basics. Just as I was about to reply, Stephen's father, who had been silently observing, interjected, honey, calm down, then, turning to me, he added, I apologize, Betty, you must be startled. Before I could fully regain my composure, Stephen's brother entered the room. Unlike his mother, he was soft-spoken, his presence almost reassuring, until he opened his mouth. My biggest concern is that you come from a single-parent family, he said. Confused, I asked, what do you mean? He smiled, but his words carried a sting. A child raised by one parent doesn't reflect well. We can't be too happy about our only son marrying someone from such a background, can we? I stiffened. What's wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked tirelessly to raise me alone. I am proud of him, and that upbringing does not make me any less worthy. Yet, they continued, insisting that I wouldn't know how to be a good wife because I lacked a mother's guidance. Stephen's mother delivered the final blow. I will allow you to marry Stephen, but in return, you must devote everything to us. That is your duty. I was speechless. Was this truly the family I was marrying into? That night, I confided in Stephen about my concerns, expecting support. Instead, he dismissed them. They didn't say anything wrong, he replied. They were just checking if you're ready for marriage. My heart sank. I had hoped he would stand by me, but instead, he was justifying their behavior. Stephen, I tried again. They demeaned me because I was raised by a single father. Don't you see how wrong that is? He hugged me, brushing my concerns aside. They're just emotional because their only son is getting married. Don't overthink it. His response haunted me, and on my wedding day, as I walked down the aisle with the father who had loved and raised me alone, I couldn't shake the growing realization that I might be stepping into a future I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. The moment I exchanged vows with Stephen and we slipped the rings onto each other's fingers, the room erupted into thunderous applause. A wave of emotions surged through me, relief, joy, nervous excitement. Despite the obstacles we had faced leading up to this day, it was our moment, and I was determined to cherish it. As I took Stephen's hand and walked down the aisle, the full reality of our union set in. I was officially his wife. It was a realization both exhilarating and profound, filling my heart with warmth I had never felt before. The reception hall was alive with energy when we entered, met with smiles, laughter, and the soft glow of a video montage playing in the background. The clips of our journey together added an intimate touch to the celebration, making it feel even more special. I found myself reconnecting with friends and relatives I hadn't seen in years, exchanging warm embraces and heartfelt congratulations. It was a surreal, joyful experience, and for a while, I allowed myself to get lost in it, forgetting my initial concerns about Stephen's parents. At that moment, I reassured myself that I had made the right choice in marrying Stephen. Our marriage registration was set to follow the ceremony, a step that would officially bind us together in the eyes of the law. As the evening continued, I soaked in every detail, the clinking of glasses, the laughter of guests, the hum of the live band. But just as I was beginning to think the day would be nothing short of perfect, an uneasy feeling crept over me. It was subtle at first, an instinctual discomfort that grew stronger as we prepared for the formalities of greeting our guests. Standing in the receiving line, I noticed Stephen's parents swaying slightly, their faces flushed an unnatural shade of red. Their eyes were glassy, their steps unsteady. It was clear they had indulged in far too much alcohol. A few relatives murmured in hushed tones, glancing at them with disapproval. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the growing tension. However, what happened next shattered any illusion of peace I had left. The moment the microphone was passed to us, Stephen's mother suddenly grabbed my hand and yanked me away from him with surprising force. Her voice boomed across the hall, startling everyone into silence. "Listen to me, Betty," she bellowed, her tone carrying the weight of an authoritarian decree. "After this wedding, you're going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you hard." A few guests chuckled awkwardly, assuming it was some kind of joke, but I knew better. There was no humor in her voice, only drunken entitlement. Before I could react, Stephen's father snatched the microphone and, in an appallingly loud voice, criticized my appearance. "Betty, Don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all, dear." His mother nodded in agreement, her expression twisted with judgment. A hushed murmur swept through the crowd. Some guests exchanged bewildered looks, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My hands trembled slightly as I turned to Stephen, silently begging for his support, for him to say something, anything, to stop his parents' cruel spectacle. But he remained frozen, staring at the floor, as if he wished the earth would swallow him whole. Then, as if the situation couldn't possibly worsen, his parents turned their drunken criticisms into outright demands. "If you're really part of our family now," his father slurred, pointing a wavering finger at me, "you need to prove your dedication. After you register your marriage, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus. That's the least you can do." The color drained from my face, my stomach churned. Had I heard correctly? They were demanding money, my money? Before I could formulate a response, my father stepped forward. He had been watching everything unfold, his face taut with barely restrained anger. Taking the microphone from Stephen's father, he spoke with a calm but firm authority. "Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" The room fell into an eerie silence. Stephen's parents glared at him, indignant. "And who are you to interrupt?" His mother sneered. "You're just a single father. Single parents are never any good." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Their audacity was staggering, their lack of decency shocking, but my father didn't flinch. He remained composed, his voice steady. "You people are even worse than I imagined," he said coldly. "You even refuse to meet me because I am a single father." Then, he dropped a revelation that changed everything. "I never thought someone like you would work for President Roy. President Roy is a respectable man, and I assumed his employees would have the same level of decency." At the mention of President Roy, a powerful business mogul and a close partner of my father's company, Stephen's father visibly stiffened. Panic flickered in his drunken eyes. My father continued, his words precise and deliberate. "And speaking of single parents, President Roy was raised by his mother alone, so you just insulted the president of the very company you work for." The shift in atmosphere was immediate. Stephen's father, who had been so bold moments ago, now looked as if he might faint. He dropped to his knees, desperation etched across his face. "I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this," he pleaded, his arrogance crumbling. As the weight of the moment sank in, I realized something with painful clarity. Stephen had remained silent through it all. He had done nothing to stand up for me, nothing to protect me from the humiliation his parents had inflicted. If he couldn't defend me on the most important day of our lives, how could I ever expect him to do so in the future? I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and reached for the microphone. With unwavering conviction, I spoke, my voice cutting through the tense air. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage." Gasps of disbelief echoed through the hall. I turned to Stephen and his family, my expression resolute. "I will make sure to return every gift and contribution given for this occasion." Then, I took my father's hand and walked out of the reception hall. The stunned faces of Stephen and his family blurred behind me as whispers of shock and admiration filled the room. In the days that followed, I methodically returned every wedding gift and monetary contribution. Guests expressed their support, commending my father and me for our integrity. The scandal followed Stephen into his professional life, where whispers of his inaction tarnished his reputation. Overwhelmed with humiliation, he eventually resigned. His father, once a man of influence, faced the consequences of his drunken disrespect. President Roy, upon hearing of the incident, demoted him, sending a clear message about the company's values. As for me, I focused on what truly mattered. My father, my unwavering pillar of strength, approached me with an unexpected proposition. "Betty, would you like to take over the company someday?" It was a future I had never considered before, but as I met his gaze, I knew my answer: "I'll do my best." Now, I am dedicating myself to learning everything about my father's business, determined to carve my own path. Romance can wait. For now, my focus is on building something greater, a future where I am the one in control.